Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott and congratulations, it's God of War Ragnarok Day. The day is finally here for you to dive into one of the best sequels, maybe in gaming history to be honest. I thought I'd inaugurate the day by putting together a set of tips and tricks, things that I gathered on my own adventures across around about 28 hours that I did getting through the story the first time. Now, this whole thing will be zero spoilers, no spoilers whatsoever, especially relating to story things, and I just want to tell you various cool tips and tricks and things that you might not know about. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com and this is God of War Ragnarok, 10 tips and tricks the game doesn't tell you. Number 10, ration your Spartan Rage. So Spartan Rage returns in Ragnarok like it was in 2018's God of War, where you're pushing both the analog sticks in when a certain meter is maxed out to put Kratos in a different damage state. And there are various other modifiers that you'll get as the story rolls out. There's different things that Kratos can use his rage for. However, it's worth knowing that, various segments of the bar need to be used when you hit something like L2 to throw a boulder or R2 to do a giant leaping attack. And they take up portions of the overall meter that you can actually just trigger anyway, even if you hardly have any meter left. So it's worth doing a whole bunch of regular attack moves, doing one of the giant leaps or something, and saving something else like the boulder until the very end of your meter and ending with that. Even though if it was a standard use of that meter overall, it would take a bigger chunk out of the overall bar. Even if you have a tiny little bit left, you can still do one of the most powerful attacks in the game as your ending animation. It's also worth pointing out that you can come back out of Spartan Rage by pushing L3 and R3 once again if you've managed to wipe out every single enemy in the area and you still have a lot of meter left. Just push both sticks back in and Kratos will calm the hell down again. Number 9, view favors to see quest rewards. So this is something that's a little bit interesting. Maybe they'll patch this going forward, because I feel like when you're mousing over, you're sort of hovering over the different realms when you're looking at one of the magic doors and deciding which realm you want to go to next, you kind of want to know which side quests are there. You kind of want to know which quests are available, what the details are, what you're going to be leaping into, rather than just the name of the quest itself. You can find this out by hitting pause and going across and looking at favors that are available. This kind of works as the game's overall quest log, and there it'll actually have a breakdown of exactly what that quest is. Sadly, that's not implemented into the magic door screen overall, so you kind of have to go between the two, but that's the only real way that you can get a breakdown of side quests and what you're up against, which is kind of weird because I feel like it should be available on the door menu, but at least for me, pre-launch, whatever, it's not. Number 8, use square during your combos. This is a carryover from 2018's God of War. Basically, as much as you might already know that tapping square, makes Atreus fire off a bunch of arrows, you can do this during the middle of any other combo. You can also hold square during the middle of any other combo to make Atreus do his special attack, to do one of his summons or whatever you've got assigned to the hold square button. What I mean is that you kind of end up with a weird claw-like maneuver going on with your hand, but you can mash R1 and square at the same time, so that Kratos is leading the offense and Atreus is firing off a whole bunch of arrows at the same time. If you can train your brain as well, you can hold square whilst hitting the shoulder buttons, and then you'll be able to trigger one of his magic attacks in the background whilst you're pressing the offense as Kratos. This is really good for keeping enemies in the air during one of the juggles. Let's say you've done one of the launches and you want to keep an enemy up in the air, make sure you do more damage to them before they come down again, or just making sure that you're absolutely peppering a mini boss so that you can make them stunned, maybe opening them up to one of the R3 attacks, or just making it so that you can carry on doing your attack animations with them unable to break out of the fact that they're reacting to all the hits being rained down upon them. Number 7, Kratos' invincibility frames. Now, if you're going up against any of the optional mini-bosses, there's a whole thing in Ragnarok, there's their whole version of the Valkyrs, there's various enemies that you can choose to fight that'll be dotted around the 9 realms that you're going to optionally go into, and that are some of the hardest fights in the game. They have a whole bunch of red attacks, the ones that are unblockable, left, right, and center. The only real way to get fluid in these fights is to know exactly when Kratos is invincible and exactly when to dodge, which is to say that the standard dodge, when you push circle by itself and Kratos just kind of steps out the way, doesn't have any invincibility frames to it. What you need to do is push circle again to make Kratos do a roll, and it's right at the apex of the roll, right when he's mid-roll, that you'll be completely invincible to anything. The only way I got through some of the hardest fights in the game, and that was keeping a mental note of exactly when a different enemy was going to come back into frame. Maybe they've done a giant leaping attack or whatever, and making sure that I was mid-roll, mid-double dodge when that thing was kicking off to avoid it entirely. Otherwise, they're going to do entire life bars worth of damage with all of those attacks, and you'll just get wiped out. Number 6, put a 180 turnaround on the touchpad. This is a bit strange because in 2018's God of War, the idea of turning around on the spot was down on the D-pad, and now it's not even a thing. You have to hit pause and go into the menu, and you can actually assign various things to the 4 directions on the D-pad, but one of them is turning 180 degrees on the spot, something that's very helpful if a whole bunch of enemies are behind you and Mimir is just screaming at you to do something about them. So I would recommend at least having a 180 turnaround available to you in some fashion. So, assign that to maybe swiping down on the D-pad or whatever, and at least you'll have it open to you when you just want to whip around and see what's coming at you. The 180 turn in Ragnarok is way faster than it is in the 2018 game, to the point that, kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense or look very believable, but Kratos can just whip around and catch something that's coming at you a lot better than he could if you didn't have this assigned. Number 5, turn on auto pickup. This is a thing that PlayStation started having across the board. The Last of Us 1 remake had it, Horizon Forbidden West had it. You can just go into the accessibility options and turn on auto pickup, which saves you doing the animation of, hitting a button to go down and pick up one of the items, which can be super helpful in certain fights. If you're just trying to get health for Kratos and you're up against an enemy that is just all up in your face non-stop, simply running towards health will automatically get it without you having to worry about where the actual specific item is. Mainly because the camera angle in God of War Ragnarok is obviously like the 2018 game, it's focusing on what's right ahead of you. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see what's on the floor and exactly where Kratos needs to stand to be able to pick something up. It's also the case that just running around in general will net you various collectibles like HACKSILVER or whatever other crafting components or whatever else you want to get just by running over it rather than, maybe missing it because you missed a circle prompt in the corner of the screen or whatever. So it's just worthwhile turning auto pickup on and just cracking on. The thing is, I do miss, or I do like the idea that Kratos stomps health things when he picks them up. So, it's a slight sacrifice for some of the tougher boss fights in the game. Number 4, scan the environment for HACKSILVER. This is a tiny thing and something that only really applies to certain parts of the game, but I did notice in a section where you're underground, you're going through this, the dwarven mines or whatever it was, you're going through this whole idea of like a underground brewery, that various barrels on the walls still had sigils on them that could be shot by Atreus, so you can still look out for different deposits of HACKSILVER, which is the main currency in the game, hidden within the environment itself. Just look for the shiny green kind of shimmering effect on certain parts of the environment, and that'll mean that you can fire a magic arrow at that thing and then get the HACKSILVER that's behind it or whatever. Basically, just keep an eye out that HACKSILVER can be in places other than the ground. Number 3, elemental buildup is the way. No, it's not a Mandalorian joke, it's the fact that God of War Ragnarok has a massive impetus on elemental buildup. The idea that this is one of the only ways you can do enough damage to really make a dent in some of the harder mini-bosses and sub-bosses and just harder enemies that you'll come across in the open world or in the open segments of the game. I'm just saying that overall, pick the attacks that do the most lasting elemental damage. You'll be able to see under the enemy's health bar the various elemental attacks that you're building up. There'll be a small sort of badge symbol that starts to fill up. It's quite small, but it's worth paying attention to. Sometimes it is just worth wielding the Leviathan Axe, holding triangle, charging it with frost, and doing those kinds of attacks over and over again, or setting a runic attack that also does frost damage. Same if you were going to specialize in the Blades of Chaos. Depending on which enemy you're going up against, it's always worth building up the elemental that is the opposite to the way that they are spec'd. Like if you're going up against an ice creature, it's worth speccing entirely towards fire, because once that elemental has maxed out, you'll do tons of damage whilst that whole thing depletes, and then you can try again. Basically, if you're struggling and you just find yourself dying over and over again and not even really making a dent in a health bar, chances are it's an elemental weakness that the creature has or the mini-boss has, and focusing on that will at least let you carve down its health bar before you die again. Number 2, use arrows in the dark to find enemies. This only really applies to the Aesir or characters that can do something to you that plunges the entire level into darkness, and the whole idea is that they're then going to try and jump you from the darkness, weaving in and out and getting cheap shots on you. If you just hit square, Atreus can just fire an arrow directly at wherever the creature is in the darkness. You won't be able to see them, but the way that the game is coded means that that square attack still has to fire an arrow at something, meaning that you can then just sprint right through the darkness and lock down whatever that annoying enemy is that is trying to hit you from afar. Another thing in here, and my mind fails me as to the exact name of the creature, but you'll know which one I mean once you start playing the game. There are certain singing imp creatures that buff everyone around them. They make sure that their health just never goes down, and they are infuriating. Every time that you realize that the enemy's health is not going down whatsoever, it means that one of these singing imp creatures is nearby, and sometimes they're hidden, sometimes they're behind in, part of the environment that you have to break before you can realize where they're singing from or whatever. The thing that I found, which is just a general tip, and it does change per realm, it changes increases per level, it depends how much general space you have to work with, is that disengaging from the enemy that you're trying to fight, literally running away for a second, will let you see the trail, the magical trail in the air that leads to the creature that is buffing them. It's somewhat obvious, but I did find that it helped when I was losing my mind trying to find exactly where the health buff was coming from. All I did was take a step back and I realized, okay, I can follow this trail to where the creature is and then cut that thing to ribbons. And number 1, restarting from a checkpoint refills health and runic abilities. Just a super quick one to end the video on. Maybe if you've been spending a lot of time in one of the open areas and you're quite low on health and you're trying to go up against the next boss, you're trying to go up against the next thing, next combat encounter that you want to do, but Kratos is on low health, just quickly pausing and hitting restart checkpoint will refill his health and will give you all your runic abilities back. It maxes everything back out. So even if you're coming out of one combat encounter and you're absolutely gassed or dogged or whatever you want to call it, pausing the game, restarting from checkpoint will refill everything and let you go into that next encounter better than ever. God of War Ragnarok's checkpointing is extremely good, and if you find yourself getting wiped out by something that you've accidentally wandered into, a certain combat encounter, or maybe one of the optional encounters that you do have to button into in some regards, just know that hitting pause and literally going on restart checkpoint will only really set you back by about 10 seconds or so. At least those are the tips and tricks that I found in my first 30-ish hours of the game, now that I'm trying to mop up all 100% of everything on offer. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Maybe there are other things that I haven't found yet, and just enjoy this glorious game. I'm so glad that we're here on launch day. The run up to this day has been a hell of a sprint across the last few weeks, getting all the different pieces of all the different videos, all the different podcasts, all those different things together, and I'm just glad that we're here. Go enjoy God of War Ragnarok. It is incredible, and let me know what else you find once you start exploring. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you soon.